Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, my guest today, Carlos Ventura Jr., is the CEO and founding partner at Feast Fettle, a premium meal delivery company. And they were recognized by the Boston Globe as one of New England's fastest growing private businesses. Since 2018, he has led companies' growth from a neighborhood chef service to a vertically integrated hospitality brand on track to exceed $50 million in annual revenue. And before founding Feast and Fettle, Carlos worked at Citi, Goldman Sachs, and Deliveroo, a whole bunch of companies you know, and one that we're going to talk about. And he serves on the board of College Visions, an organization supporting first-generation college students. In 2025, he was named EY Entrepreneur of the Year in New England. That's awesome, man. Carlos, welcome to the podcast, man.
Appreciate it, Adam. That was a very nice introduction.
Hi, I'm gonna bottle those up and sell them. That's the second time I heard this today. So I think I have a new product. I'm gonna productize that and just record them as interest rate. Well, awesome, man. Welcome to the show. And as we were talking about before, I get a lot of inbound requests from PR companies, and I would say the majority of them are just not interesting or garbage or not targeted. But when I saw your story, I'm like, this is interesting. I need to dig in. So let's dig in here. So before we get to the story of Feast and Fettle, we need to talk about you and your background in business as an entrepreneur. And if you don't mind me asking, what did your parents do for a living? Let's get to the real core origin story here.
Oh, yeah. So my mom was a hairdresser, and my dad, like would install like vertical blinds in people's homes, and that, it's real interesting. No one's ever asked me that question, and
It's important.
I started to, immediately reminisce. My dad would go door to door, right? And he essentially door to door salesman and try to install vertical blinds in, the southeast coast of Massachusetts where I grew up. And, I kind of got like a little bit of a sales experience as a kid because I would go with him and just drive around and, put the little flyers in the mailboxes, talk to,
Right.
the folks at the door. And my mom, she worked at, as a hairstylist, but she was typically, salons inside of malls.
Hmm.
And why that's important is because as a child, I spent a lot of time in malls, just like walking around by myself and just watching consumers
Mm.
and understanding like, why did they go into J.C. Penney and or Macy's and why did they make that decision versus this decision? And I always found it fascinating as to like the human psychology behind making purchases and placement and merchandising. So long story short, I'm glad you asked me that question because it made me reminisce.
Yeah, well, so let's dig into a little bit, and so let's talk about the mall for a little bit with your mom there, and in the young age having that kind of mindset to think about consumer trends and behavior there. It's one thing to see somebody walk into a store, but it's really about seeing what they walk out with, right? Are they walking out with the bags
Well,
in their hands? Are they moving from, if they're walking out of J.C. Penney with nothing in their hand, walking into Macy's? What did they not get at J.C. Penney that they found in Macy's? And to even
that's
think
right.
about that is extraordinary at such a young age. Like, did you know
Or
back then
even
that, like, right, that like business, some kind of business was your move, and you weren't going into, hairdressing or the window dressing industry?
I had no idea. I mean, I was just following natural inclination and things I was interested in. I would not only pay attention to what they were walking in and or walking out of the store with, but almost like their facial expressions and
Mm.
their emotions. So when they walked out of J.C. Penney, were they walking out with the same attitude and mood that they were walking out when they walk out of, Foot Locker or Macy's? And those distinctions I would like hone in on and I just found it extraordinarily fascinating. I don't really, no one, I didn't grow up with, I say business in my family, so to speak. Kind of really the first in my family to go to college and be an entrepreneur. So, um, it's bizarre. I mean, it's bizarre, but it's kind of fun to think back on.
And when you think about your dad's business, I mean, he was definitely in there. I wouldn't say he wasn't an entrepreneur. He was definitely selling in there. But if you look back on it now? What was one of those early lessons you learned from your dad that you're taking with you now?
Yeah. Hopefully my dad doesn't listen to this, but sometimes you learn what not to do, right? My dad had or has like an enormous let's just say he has a very uh he pays attention to the details, right?
Mm.
he focuses on the minute details, and I think that's actually an asset, right?
Of course.
Um, the the thing that my dad didn't do, and this is why he couldn't grow his business, is because he couldn't trust anybody else.
Ooh,
He
interesting. He
could
couldn't
not,
like control. He couldn't give up control for anything.
couldn't give up control. So if it meant giving up more business because he wasn't the one doing the installation, then so be it. So a little bit of stubbornness, or a lot of it is stubbornness, but also, the lack of trust. And he, we talk about that, and he, talk about Feast and Fettle, and he's like, I don't know how you have that many employees,
Mm.
like you must really trust them. And I'm like, yeah, like there's no other way. There's no other way to it. You have to
There's
trust
no
these
other way.
folks.
There's no other way to scale, and we'll definitely dig into that in a little bit. And I find that too as an entrepreneur. And there's times when my business was, really thriving, and I had a lot of folks working for me in the recruitment business, and you had to trust them. You had to trust the people that you hire because otherwise, there's no way to scale.
Right.
And that teaches you management. That teaches you people management, and we'll certainly get to that in a little bit. But what was it like, man, being the first person in your family to go to college? What did that feel like?
Um, it felt great. I mean, I'll always remember, I got an acceptance letter from Northeastern, and we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
But I got
sure.
an acceptance letter from Northeastern, which was my school of choice. And I'll never forget, I walked into, so they sent a letter to my mom's place of work, I'm pretty sure, because I walked in and like I seen that she had like opened the letter,
Why'd you open
and
it?
and she was just in such a great mood, and I don't know, like it made me more happy that she was happy, right? And um that was awesome because I felt at that point in time, I'm going to be able to change the course of my life, and my family's life. And I think that just felt really, really, really good. Because I didn't grow up with much, and just having an opportunity to change
Huge.
that is huge.
Yeah, and I think we need to talk about this more, just generally speaking in society, right? The opportunity and lifting folks up, and so many families, there are first generation college students, and what that means from an accomplishment standpoint. But it's a responsibility too. Did you feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility? Like it's hard for me to put myself in that position. My parents were New York City Board of Education teachers, both have their master's degrees. My grandfather was a doctor. He went through higher education. It's nothing. It's something I never even thought about. And like I knew I was going to college. I mean, I didn't go to a grade school. My grades sucked and all that, but I never had that responsibility. I mean, my responsibility was to actually graduate and not foot them with the bill. But what did that feel like? That responsibility element.
um, it's my parents never I never had any pressure, and I'll come back to this later, hopefully, because that was actually an asset, and still to this day is an asset. There's no pressure. They don't. Their expectations of me are, I guess, my own expectations of
Mm,
myself. But when I got that acceptance letter, and to me it was more about like, okay, now the pathways open up. You better take it, and don't fuck this up. You cannot fuck this up. But also, like,
pressure.
I was so ambitious and so driven. I'm like, I'm not gonna fuck this up, right? Like I was
Mm.
already locked in. And
It kept you straight.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's super interesting because when I got into college, I wasn't a normal student. I had kind of done all my, I'll say, partying, at a
Right.
younger age. I had a lot of flexibility and freedom, and I'm
You
I'm
got
like
that done.
watching these like 18 and 19-year-olds running around, like I'm like,
Raging.
these kids are crazy. Um, and so, one, I got it out of my system, but two, I was just so locked in, I always wanted to take care of my mom, right? Like I think a lot of
Love
sons
that
can probably
motivation.
admit to
Mm.
that. And, I was like, look, like, we grew up when we had relocated when my parents split up, and we moved from New Bedford to Martha's Vineyard, which is a completely like night and
Hmm.
day situation. But we lived in a basement in my uncle's house in Martha's Vineyard, and um, like together in like one tiny room. And I'm like, like that's motivating. Like I say that out loud now, and I'm like, who,
Yeah, it's only up
like
from there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, a little bit of responsibility, but just extraordinarily motivating.
So you do well in school and you come out and why, I mean, why finance? Why business? And I think you kind of alluded to it earlier that it was kind of in your blood early on, but why specifically finance? I mean, you had an internship at Citi, you had an internship at Forrester's. Like, you chose that path. Why?
Um, I didn't pick my major until my junior year, and by then I'd already transitioned to UMass. Northeastern kicked me out, so shout out to Northeastern.
Thanks.
Yeah, I got kicked out because I couldn't afford to stay there. I couldn't, I had no credit. My parents
It's
had no
tough.
credit either, so I couldn't co-sign any loans. So, long story short, transition to UMass. But junior year didn't have a major. I walked by. I was in the business school, and I walked by one of these like flyer boards, and I just looked at the starting salaries
You're
seriously
like,
for
oh,
all of these roles,
I
and I
could
was
come
like,
out of school and start there. Shit. Like, what do I do
yep,
to got to get there? How do I make that happen?
100%.
Right.
Yeah, and to me that was like, hey, this is this is interesting. So I joined like it was like the finance club, and I just joined one of the meetings, and some guy came in and he started talking about the financial crisis, and I was like, oh, this is fascinating. Like it was 2008 or 9.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Um, Super interesting to just again going back to the psychology of humans, and particularly during abnormal times, I find that the most fascinating thing. And at that point in time, one, getting a high starting salary, and two, being able to engage in that like interesting human psychology point in history was what attracted me to finance.
But let's talk about those internships. And anyone who's been listening to the show for a while knows that I've had my fair share of internships that I really say paved the way to my success. And I always say it's almost more important that you learn what you don't like in the internship than what you do like to move you forward. So you had this internship at Citi, which led to your first, real role as an analyst. But what did you learn during that internship that you hated? Like, I do not want to be doing this.
So there were times where I feel like we would sit in the office for the sake of sitting in the office.
Those are the old days. I had friends that did that, right? Like, it was a contest, right?
Yeah, and I was like, what the fuck are we like? What are we doing?
I'm not doing
And
anything.
it was mind blowing to me because at that time I had put like Wall Street on a pedestal, right? Like I thought that was the pinnacle. If I could get a job on Wall Street, I had already chosen finance, and I had like interviewed with like Travelers in Connecticut, and I got an internship literally on 111 Wall Street in New York
Mhm.
City. And I was like, like I made it. I feel like I made it. And when you feel like you made it and the doors open, and then you see people just sitting in the office for the sake of like FaceTime, literally.
Yeah.
I That was the first red flag for me. I was like, oh, like I thought this was just going to be a constant, challenge, and there that wasn't the case.
No.
Um,
But what I remember that too, like the old mentality, right? It was first in, last out in the office, right? That was like when you were early on, you would hear from your parents and other folks too. I mean, that culture and thought has changed as far as like, get in, do your job, be productive, and have the work-life balance. We'll get to that in a little bit. But that has certainly changed along the way. But where was it when you started to kind of niche down into saying, all right, the investment banking and the corporate development? Because that really paves the path to where we are today.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll run through this quickly, but I do my internship. I'm ranked one of the top analysts. They give me an additional amount of money to come back and commit before my senior year.
That had
So
to feel
I'm
good. You're like,
oh yeah,
I'm gonna be able to pay the bills here.
yeah, I they gave me a relocation from Western Mass to New York, and I was like, I don't need this. I took me and my friend on a trip to Brazil. Like
There you go.
that was how I was operating at the time. Um, and so, I get there, and it was one of those analyst rotational programs. So they try you in different parts and of the business, and that was really cool. And that's where I started to realize like I enjoyed being a generalist. I enjoyed understanding all the different facets and how they tie together. But the corporate thing was like killing me. It was really killing me. I'm a very ambitious person, and so if you put red tape in front of me, it's like the worst possible thing. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to be a consultant, and I didn't get to travel growing up, so like someone else is going to pay for my travel.
Yeah,
Uh,
smart.
so I joined a company called Capco, traveled around the U.S. for 3 years, 4 years. Um, that's fascinating because you get to essentially sit with C-level executive decision makers, and you're like 25 and they're
Hmm.
like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Um, so, so you learn real quick how to um, answer that question
Yeah,
the right way.
and how to carry yourself in front of seasoned professionals too. And how to elevate.
That's right.
Did you ever feel like back then, like a case of either fake it, you make it, or like imposter syndrome? I have a buddy that works for EY. He's a partner now too, and I've talked about him at times too. And it's like I remember, and he's a lifer. He came out of school and he's been there 20 plus years. One of the youngest partners, one of the youngest to make partner there. And he's like, dude, he's like, I found myself in rooms that I didn't feel like I belonged in, but in the end of the day, it elevated me, and I had to learn my role and not listen before I speak. Did you have something similar?
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of the word imposter syndrome, more because of how it's been like convoluted and portrayed. It's
Mm,
not a crutch. It's actually an opportunity. You
mm,
should feel like that.
agree.
It's a sign of growth. Um, and so every time I would find myself, and this happened a lot in consulting, I'm like, I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know this business nearly as well as the folks in this room, but I'm still here.
And you
So
have
I'm
value to
gonna,
bring.
and I have value to bring, and so I'm gonna deliver that value in the most confident, clear, concise manner possible. And I say that now so tight, right? But like that wasn't the
No.
case
Ramble
when you're
on.
younger and ramble on, make no sense. You've got to go through the trenches.
Right.
Um, but it's to me, if you feel imposter syndrome, that's what you want to feel.
It means you're in
That's
the right
what you should
place, right?
seek
It
out.
means you're in the right place.
That's right.
I feel the same way too, because I also think when people, and this is just me going on a rant here, I think a lot of people don't really understand what it means, and they think it's like a buzzwordy thing to say to sound like you accomplished something. But it really is true when you feel yourself in a room that you don't belong in, you need to take that step back and be like, no, no, I'm meant to be here. That's why I don't believe in imposter syndrome. Every room, and it's not a humble brag. It's just a confidence in who I am and what I do. Said, no, no, I belong on this stage. I belong to
And
be interviewing this guest on my show because I've put in the work and I have the freaking receipts for it.
that's right. You have the receipts, and also, you're printing new receipts, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
and I used to, and there's different, like, little kind of exercises or mantras or whatever it is that works for you. Like for me, I'd always pop on like an old Jay-Z album and just rock out and like forget everything. Like you go, you do all the preparing and in the world, and then there's a point where you need to stop and forget it and like remove it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd pop on Jay-Z, you know,
You
flipping off
find
for a little bit, and then just walk right in with like the confidence that I think is actually more valuable than the kind of concrete knowledge itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely goes a long way. But going back to something you said earlier, right? You were in this corporate world, but you don't like the red tape, but you're still sticking with it.
Yeah.
And then you move over. I mean, Deliveroo. What is Deliveroo for anyone who's not familiar?
Yeah, so Deliveroo is it's a food delivery platform. Similar to Uber Eats. It's just over in Europe, primarily Europe and Asia.
So what drew you over there and move away from, the big business? I mean, I can only assume, I mean, hopefully the money was good there, but, you know, right? Like compared to a Goldman, like what was the move?
So when I moved to London for Goldman, another kind of, hey, someone's gonna pay for me to travel
Right.
and go get some experience, and let's
Exactly.
go do that. Me and my wife were like, let's go. And at Goldman, I knew that I was at the, premier kind of A+
You're at the
league.
top of
And
the
that's
top.
very true. I'm not gonna lie. Hats off to Goldman. When you walk in, you know what the fuck it's
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yep.
Like they don't need to talk to you about the culture. There's no onboarding. It is like very evident what's going on. And I respect them for that. But again, like I knew it wasn't for me long term, because I look at the gentlemen that were, 50, 55, and how their entire identity was like predicated on whether or not they were going to make partner at Goldman Sachs. And I was like, I just found that like sad, I found that like, I don't know, sad and not motivating for me.
Yeah, it's like life.
Um,
Certain things are, it's not for you. But listen, if it's for them, kudos to them. But you knew it wasn't for
right.
you. Like you
I
knew it
knew it
wasn't for
wasn't for
you,
me.
and you had to step out of your comfort zone. You had to step into something different because you probably felt if you stayed that path, you were going to be stuck as a lifer there. And listen, There's nothing wrong with being, listen, making partner at Goldman, you're doing all right in life, right? But it wasn't for
Right.
you.
Wasn't
But
for
you knew.
me. And I could see, my peers, some of them, it was for them. And I was like, I'm not that. So
Hmm.
you gotta know yourself, right? And
Yeah.
so that was when I was like, all right, it's time. I'm gonna do my own thing. I've always had that entrepreneurial. I mean, growing up, I would sell anything, flip anything. I just
Hmm.
had it in me. And so I was like, I'm gonna move back to the US, but before I do that, I'm gonna join a startup here in the UK. And the startup economy in the UK is not like it is in the US,
What's the fundamental
but
difference there?
oh, w- w- it's just the mentality, right?
Mm.
Like I think even when I left Goldman, a lot of the folks in the European office, like particularly the junior folks, were like, "Oh my God!" Like, and I'm like, "It's not like I don't know. I felt like I was like being American, you know, quitting the Goldman Sachs,
Taking a risk.
yeah, taking risk and being so excited about the risk. That's not as embedded in European culture, not even close. It's not. I think they have come a long way, but it's still, you go to San Francisco, right? Like it's not even close.
No.
Um, and so I leave Goldman and I was like, okay, I'm going to join a company here that has raised some capital that is growing really fast. And I had spent some time at Goldman, so I'd known the space pretty well. So I joined Deliveroo, and that was wild. I mean, it was the heyday of raising a shit ton of capital, acquiring customers, and I'll never forget this day. Our office was so small that the kind of corp dev team was working out of like a shitty apartment across the street from the office that like no one really was supposed to know about.
That's
And
funny.
we raised the next round of capital, and I remember walking into that office and man, I was like, something's not right. This office is too nice.
Mm.
Like we were burning
Just burning cash.
15, 17 million a month.
Jeez.
And again, I was like, this isn't for me. Like, I knew I was like, this cycle
Something
of
isn't right.
something's not right. And granted, they made it, they IPO'd, and Will Shu is a phenomenal entrepreneur. That guy can fucking run through brick walls, all jokes aside.
Hmm.
But I was like, something's not right. And I had one rule. So me and my wife had made the decision to move back to the US. And the only rule was that I wasn't going to do anything in food delivery.
Funny you say that. Funny you say that. So you're a year there. What made you break that rule, man? With Feast and Fettle.
Okay. So,
What was that
yeah,
spark? How'd you have that? Let's talk about that conversation, man. I loathe these wonderful conversations with my wife. I told you I wasn't going to
oh
do
my
this, but I
God.
kind of did it, and here's why.
Yeah. Yeah. So I shared that rule with my wife. I'm like, I have a lot of ideas, and consider myself a pretty ambitious and strong executor. So I was confident in my ability to be successful and figure something out. And it was just the timeliness and
Mm.
serendipity that I had two of my childhood best friends, their wives had started this private chef service.
Hmm.
I knew it existed, but I had never had any experience with it at all. And they reached out and they said, hey, we've been doing this for a couple of years. We have the same 35 customers. We're either going to kind of call it quits or we're going to swing for the fences. And we need someone to help on the business side. And mind you, they were tiny. They were doing like 200 grand a year. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I can like advise while I like figure out like what I'm going to do. And I go back to the US. They were in an incubator kitchen at the time in Rhode Island. I tore the kitchen. You say tore the kitchen like it's like
Right.
one tiny room. I'm
Wasn't
in
the
the
burner
kitchen.
den, right?
Yeah, not at all. Uh, and I had, mind you, at Deliveroo, I led competitive intelligence. So I had tried a whole bunch of meal delivery services across Europe, and I
So you
knew
understood the market, you understood
I
quality
un
product, infrastructure.
yeah,
You had a good fun, more than a fundamental. You had a pretty good understanding.
I did, and I also wouldn't have actually used any of those products long term. And when I seen what they were doing, I was like, that's the one that I would use. That's the one that at Goldman Sachs I wish I had.
Uh,
And so it was family style, like so entrees and sides,
Hmm.
high quality ingredients. They were literally shopping with their clients' credit cards at Whole Foods. Um, Attention to detail with the packaging, delivered by them in a branded van. And just like it's not one thing, it's just the whole
The whole
collection and
experience.
perspective, that hospitality lens, the customer service, everything was just like, and it was 100% manual at the time and tiny. But I seen it, and I seen I, I can't remember who said this quote, like go scale something that's not scalable or something
Mm.
along those lines. But that was the quintessential, like
So
this thing is not scalable. Like
so
let's try to scale it.
so you have a challenge in front of you, right? You have this challenge in front of you from neighborhood chef taking up to 50 million, right? Like, and we just talked about it. Meal delivery is unprofitable players, right? There's failures. There's so many startups in the space that people think they could do it differently, right? And oh, we have access to a ghost kitchen, right? We understand this space, but margins could be tough, delivery fees, and then you start to layer on top for people who don't understand that the fees that you got to pay to an Uber Eats or a DoorDash, and plus your overhead, it's crazy. Was it more? You start to put the pieces together, right? So you have the quality, you have the hospitality and all that. But then you're looking at the numbers. What were the numbers that said, hey, we can make this work? Like, what did you have to do to make this profitable? What did you have to
So
change or not change?
so before I started, the retention numbers were crazy. So we were looking at like 45, 50% user retention after 12 months. Granted, it was a much smaller company at the time, but I'm comparing that to like everyone else in the marketplace is like sub 20. So
Right.
like high teens, right? It was like best in class. And I'm like, this is like almost 50%. So there was a call it a green flag, right? Like I was like, oh shit, this is
Yeah.
not,
There's
I've
some
never
good
seen this
indicators here.
before. Um, so it was always a matter of scaling up what was already being done at a small scale. And to that day, that's still what we do. It's like, how can we still make this feel like Maggie is cooking all of the food for this family and dropping it off and leaving it in their refrigerator? Like that is the feeling we want, that high touch, high quality feeling. Granted, we've had to invest in technology,
Hmm.
operations, marketing, product, the whole nine, and that happened over time. But the one thing that I think that helped us is we didn't get ahead of ourselves with raising too much capital, right? Like we were super capital efficient, and it forces you to figure things out.
Right. Because once you go down the path of raising capital and looking for investors, you don't have control, and they're your customers because they own you. Right? You're beholden to the shareholders. You're beholden to your investors, and you're working for them. And that's so smart. Right? You talk a lot about smart growth versus business scaling, like blitz scaling, where they go out to do a cash grab or market share. And you talked about that. How do you resist the pressure? But my real question is, how do you keep that level of quality service and hospitality and scale at the same time? How do you do that?
We obsess about it. Everybody in the company obsesses about it. I mean, never, ever get comfortable with the status quo. We're only competing with ourselves. I could 95% of my calories come from Feast and Fettle.
Hmm.
I am giving constant feedback. Now everybody at the company also is a member. They're consuming the food. It's just
Well, that's smart,
embedded. It's
right? You
embedded,
eat your own dog food,
and
literally, right? It's not dog
that's
food,
right.
but
Well,
yes.
I feed my kid. I mean, I feed my kids this
Yeah,
food, so it better be,
it better be.
on point. And I think it's just the one thing you said is who's your customer? When you raise a shitload of capital from the wrong investors
Hmm.
and you just like to post that on your LinkedIn, happy to celebrate. I just raised 50 million. I'm like, happy you owe somebody 150 in 5 years, but
Yep.
right, like that's what you should be celebrating.
It's
And that's your customer. Like, make sure you know who your customer is, and make sure that when you
or-
raise that amount of capital, is your company venture back eligible, right? Is it
I mean,
venture back eligible? Not, I think, 5, 10 years ago, everything was just venture backed, everything from Allbirds to, like you've got the
right,
every single industry.
but look, keep me straight here. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with folks like yourself, and the common takeaway is make raising capital your last resort. Make raising capital your last resort, and it has to be for the right reason. Say, like, listen, we're ready to blow up, but we just don't have the capital. If we had, $30 million, we could do X, Y, and Z from a production growth standpoint. We could hire X amount of people. But if you could do that organically, there's no reason to.
A hundred
You own
percent.
it.
And also think, yeah, there's an ownership perspective. There's also like from the investor's perspective, like what type of entrepreneur do you want to invest in? The one that is resourceful, the one that can figure shit out, or the one that you need to give 100 million. Like it's there's a lot of
Well,
analogies you could tie to this, right?
well,
But
right. But think about this too. Once you, as a CEO, go from being a true CEO to being a fundraiser, your main job is servicing those investors and not the core product, customer, employees. It changes you and your responsibilities. You're out there just raising funds, and you got to keep out your seed, pre-seed, Series A. Like that's all you're doing.
yeah, are you a fundraiser or are you a builder? And you know what? I actually don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but you should be clear on which one you are and which path you're taking your company down. I, without a doubt, the number one thing I hate doing the most is asking people for money. Like I'm not ashamed to admit that. However, it's a lot easier to ask for that, when you've got the growth, the profitability, the proof behind you, right? Like I think that's how I think about it. But also, I met a bunch of entrepreneurs that pre-seed, pre-revenue and raised 10, 15, 20 million bucks without blinking. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, let's talk about scaling a little bit. You were in the Northeast, right? You were in New England, and I see that you moved down to DC to expand it. Like, talk about expansion and the strategy behind strategic expansion. When the time is right, when you feel like you've saturated, not just saturated the market, but you have a solid footprint in your, origin primary place of business.
Yeah. And, we've been very methodical about this since day one. We've always expanded in adjacent markets. There's a ton of benefit to doing that. You kind of create buzz for the next market. But we're also patient and opportunistic. I think, you know, sometimes when you really, really want something and you start to kind of put on that manifestation hat
Mm-hmm.
and, the world, the world's very open to that. And what I mean is, we could see the light at the end of the tunnel with our current capacity at what we call K1, our facility in Rhode Island. And, I'm like, we gotta find another kitchen, but we really didn't want to build one from scratch. Like
Mm,
we had gone through a lot of build outs,
right.
and the
It's a
last
lot.
thing we wanted to do. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, it's like, it's not fun. Um, so we start searching, and very long story short, we landed on a facility in I'll say it's between DC and Baltimore, and it's in the perfect location. It was fully built out. We have a small amount of investment we need to make,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the most important part is we set our mind on we're going to find this facility. We are going to make this happen. We think there will be opportunities. And when you kind of lock into that mindset, those opportunities start to surface. You just got to be patient
Right,
and
and you and you
they'll
and
come
you
to the
felt
table.
and you felt the market was good there too. And but the other real key piece is to the Feast and Fettle success is vertical integration. For anyone out there that's not familiar, it's really owning the full stack of operations, beginning to end. What are some of those advantages and challenges for those folks out there who might not be too familiar, especially when it comes to the food, restaurant, hospitality space?
Yeah. So investors, depending on who they are, typically, it's actually changing now, but historically, right, like they haven't liked the whole vertical integration because it's not as scalable. You can't really kind of like a Uber Eats, right? It's a marketplace. I can just scale
Hmm.
digitally. It's a pure technology business. But vertical integration lets you control the customer experience. Vertical integration means you're not sharing the margin,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and so I think that's very important, and I think it's almost existentially important in our business in particular because this is hospitality. I I could not imagine trying to solve a customer's problem if my product is sitting in a box on a FedEx truck. I
You
just
have no
don't
idea.
know, like, I don't
You
know
lose
how to
control of it.
solve it. You lose control. And when I think back to the product that we started with and the solution that we had, why would we veer off from that? Right?
You
Like
and
that
also you have
is the
control.
solution.
But you also go back to control, something that your dad, so fondly one of his his key attributes too. There's a positive side of control, especially from this side too. You know where your products are, you know where the distribution, the food production is. You have control over it. And from a customer experience standpoint, if a customer comes back for some reason and says, you know what, this particular meal was not good, you could trace it back the entire way and take responsibility and course correct it. You can't always do that
One
when you're not vertically integrated.
1000%. We take all of that. I could not express to you how much feedback across the whole stack our entire team obsesses about constantly, daily. Like we will talk about one customer's complaint about how the food was not
Mm.
delivered to the right door in this particular neighborhood for the second time in a row. Like I will chime in on that conversation, right? Like, but that is the level of excellence we expect and the customers expect in if you really
But
want
that's
them
the
to stick
brand.
around.
That's the
That's the
brand.
brand.
I mean, retention is the key metric. Retention and referral. Retention and referral. The two R's I always talk about. So let's talk expansion next. New York
Yeah.
City on the horizon, man. You're gonna step in over here. You're
We
gonna get it
launched
this
a few weeks
right. You
ago.
did right. Like why now? Right. Like this is the hotbed of food service delivery at all different levels. I mean, it is a concentration of affluence and convenience and quality. Like how you approaching it differently than other markets or even other competitors.
Oh man, I lived
Yeah,
in New York for a while, and
it's a different game.
it's a different game. And so when I think about New York City, we didn't think we were going to launch in the city, and what happened was we launched in Brooklyn first, uh, and
That's a cool spot anyway, man.
Brooklyn took off.
Of course
And
it did.
we launched in Brooklyn and we launched in Hoboken, and we accidentally had to drive across through Manhattan a couple of
Going through the
times.
city anyway, unless you're building a boat, you gotta cross a couple of rivers.
And we were like, okay, let's try this out. Let's pilot this in Lower Manhattan.
Hmm.
And I think what Feast and Fettle is, and there's a gift and a curse to being in this industry. And I hate that we are considered meal delivery because we don't consider ourselves like that. We consider ourselves as a business that gives families back their time. That's it, right? And we so happen to use delivery as one of the mechanisms to make that happen.
Right.
A lot of these other businesses have dumped money into the market and dumped shitty product onto the market.
It's like
So
airplane food.
yeah, and so it's like I just want to show New York City like what this really can be, like what it really is, what you can actually have. You can actually sit down and have like vibrant green broccolini
Hmm.
with, high grade protein like steak tips and sit down and enjoy it and make it, and it will genuinely feel like you sat down and you prepared that meal. It will not be, you will not have to sacrifice quality.
I love
And
that.
and New York City is the most competitive place in the world. I moved there when I was young because it was the most competitive place in the world, and there's no way like we could almost like it's hard not to go there. And so we're
No.
we're pumped.
Now you
We're
talk about
pumped.
being a pressure cooker. So what's next? What's the next big market on the horizon? Give us some alpha
Yeah,
here, Carlos.
yeah. We're like I said, we have a second facility down in the DMV area, so expect to see uh, new market launches around the DMV area in January. We
I,
move quick.
I love it. And it's not just about food too. You guys, purpose beyond profit. You're on the board of College Visions, which supports first generation college students. How does that mission of access and opportunity really influence how you lead and grow your company as a CEO?
We have two customers, um, and those customers are our actual customers that are paying for our service, and then we've got our employees. And me and my COO talk about this all the time. If you take care of those customers, your shareholders are automatically taken care of.
100%.
And when I think about our employees, this industry is tough, right? Like we are hiring folks that come from, you know, no idea when you're going to clock out, right? Like I'm working at a restaurant. It's intense. I'm working service. I don't know when I'm clocking out. Like it's an intense industry, and without a doubt one of the most difficult industries to work
Oh,
in.
by far.
So when they come to Feast and Fettle, first and foremost, I'm like, look, this is going to be different. You're going to have a shift. We're still going to expect, the same level of performance, but it's going to be more calculated. We're going to take care of you. We provide healthcare. You get a free meal plan for you and your family. I want
Love it.
everybody to, consume
Live
the
and breathe
food,
the product. Yeah, of course.
live in, and we've built this over time, right? Like I wasn't able to say that like in the beginning, like I couldn't afford it, like, but we've added healthcare, we've added, a stipend for wellness. Our COO and head of people is constantly trying to help folks, particularly in this industry, because it's not getting any easier.
It's one of the
And
roughest out there, man. If
we're
not.
constantly reinvesting in our team and more initiatives for them to, make life just easier for them as well, because that's what we do for our members. So it's not easy. It's actually one of the biggest challenges we have is building that out internally. And
And
outside of people just feeling the love and the food, I don't think we shed enough light on that
I
side.
think, and I completely agree. And I think more companies need to realize that the ROI of investing in your people is going to pay dividends. The cost of replacing, the cost of rehiring. And again, it goes back to retention. If you can retain your employees the same way you approach it, you're retaining your customers, that's a winning combination. Everyone feels vested. Everyone feels vested.
100%.
And it's worth every penny. And if you run the numbers, which I'm sure you do, it may not be immediate and it's going to be an initial investment, but that's going to pay over the long term. And the customers are going to taste it. They're going to taste consistency and quality. And that's what it's all about, right?
100%. 100%. And again, it's, you keep asking, or you ask like, hey, how are you different than anyone else in your industry? And I think like it's these little things, right? Like because we're not, running around and saying we're a technology business to just sound sexy and cool, right? Like we understand what we are. Technology enables what we do, without a doubt. Love technology. But, first and foremost, we got to take care of the people first. And you'd be surprised. It's strangely sometimes counterintuitive to, what this pure play kind of capitalist mindset is. But
Mm,
I almost like ironically think it is a pure play capitalist, like, right? Like it comes full circle,
it
comes
does.
full circle.
It certainly does. So I had one of my favorite authors, entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, and a mentor from afar, Will Guidara, on my show. He has an incredible book, Unreasonable Hospitality. I only assume you read it, and if not, I'm going to get it
Yeah.
into your hands. So, Carlos, how do you define hospitality?
Ooh, I define hospitality as understanding and appreciating a customer's needs, wants, and desires even before they know what they are.
I love that take on that. That's a good one. If anyone who wants to know Will's, they could check out his book or his interview on my show if they want to check that one out. But Carlos, let me ask you this: as heavy as a crown, right? You're doing great for your company. You're building a legacy. You're building a future for your family. But what's keeping you up at night these days?
Oh man, I'm never satisfied. Like I think that's like I'm not the first to say that. It's probably an asset in terms of being an entrepreneur, but
Yep.
you get fixated on the smallest thing and it becomes the biggest thing. And I guess the only thing that keeps me up at night is uh, we're about to launch our second facility and we have to deliver. We have to deliver. I'll make sure we deliver, but it's still going to keep me up at night until
Mm.
we actually deliver, right? Like, so I'll be up. I sleep well now. I mean, I say sleep better. I've learned over the years that, and maybe this is a little piece of advice for someone going through it. Focus on the sleep because, I mean, that has an enormous amount of ROI.
Yeah.
So
I mean, listen, bad sleep, bad day, bad decision making. It's
that's
all
right.
about that. Figure out the way to do it. So before we wrap up here, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, right? You're building this company built on values and quality. So when you're hiring, and we're not talking about the frontline employees, when we're talking about, marketing executives, or really anyone in your company, when they get to you, what are those questions or those type of questions you ask to really see if someone's going to be a value add to your company? I don't say culture fit, I say value add.
I tend to ask folks a broad set of questions. I don't really have these fixed set of questions, but what I'm really trying to get at is what motivates them. I guess I do ask, like, what is the thing that's going to kind of naturally get you excited when you wake up in that morning? Like everybody, or I hope most people know that feeling when you wake up excited. It's almost like Christmas morning,
Yep.
but it's not Christmas, right? Like, what are you excited to go work on? And when they respond to that, I look for the authenticity in the answer and like the true desire and passion. I could care less, honestly, what they actually say.
Mm.
I care more about how real it is. Because
feel it.
if I can feel that, then I can help them unlock that and apply it at Feast and Fettle.
Motivation. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
critically important. And what is that greatest piece of career advice that you received that you pay forward?
I had this guy work for at Citi. His name was Richard Ernesti. I think he led like global investor sales, really high up at the company. And I still am. I'm extraordinarily ambitious, and this is probably more for the kids that are younger and maybe first in their family to kind of have some level of success, whatever you define success as. And he just told me to, relax, be patient. Like this will all come, and you'll have another set of problems to be worried about. And he was right.
He was totally right.
He was 100% right.
Yeah, and you kind of lead to my last question, right, Carlos? You look back at how far you've come and all that you've accomplished. I mean, everything from EY Entrepreneur of the Year to first in your family to go through college and graduate and building this incredible company. But you also look at the road ahead of you. Carlos Ventura Jr., how do you define success at this moment in your life?
I want to be able to one day help people do what I was able to do. Right? Like I want to be able to deploy capital, resources, advice, anything to help folks, particularly that are coming from non-traditional backgrounds, right? I'm not talking about the Harvard grad that expects to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. I'm talking about, the guy who came here from Guatemala and has a coffee truck. That's actually a real guy in Providence. Help him grow his company to help him support his family. Like I want to be able to scale that. And I think Feast and Fettle is kind of the first proof of concept and platform to eventually help me get there. And I look at Feast and Fettle as the boot camp of entrepreneurialism because it's literally like a production business, a logistics business, a technology business. I mean, it's hard. It's very hard. And so I'm learning a lot, and I hope to be able to truly pass that on to more folks at scale in the future.
I love it. Carlos, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you and your time. I want everyone to check out Feast and Fettle, feastandfettle.com. We're going to link it up in the show notes. Available now in 7 states across the Northeast and available in Manhattan. So if I live on Long Island, could you get it for me from Brooklyn to Long Island to try this thing out? Or maybe I'll go pick it up in Brooklyn.
Oh, no, we're delivering to Long Island.
Oh,
so we're going to have to get your address and hook you up.
We're going to have to do a Feast and Fettle there. And Carlos, this has been awesome. I love this conversation. We're going to link it up all in the show notes. And everyone out there, listen, if this show meant something to you, leave a review. Rating it goes a long way. Sharing means caring. You could find out more at thepozcast.com. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels. Check out our YouTube. I'm really trying to grow it, folks. YouTube is hard. Go to podcast. Go to youtube.com/thepozcast. Remember, be good to yourself. Be better to others. And catch us next week for another great episode of The Podcast. Take care, everybody.